This is John Cola with GrowingYourGreens.com. I have another exciting episode for you. I'm traveling on the road, and when I'm traveling, guess what? One of the favorite things I like to do is stop at garden shops and places that sell and grow food. And I'm happy to say that I'm at one of them today. We're here in Coldwater, Michigan at the Showcase Gardens and Farm Market. This is where they have all kinds of stuff to grow your own food, and they'll also sell you some homegrown food as well. So I'm here to check out to see what they got growing on inside and actually probably even pick up some produce. So let's hit inside this place and check it out. All right, so this is a good sign. They have some homegrown watermelon right here. A couple different varieties. They sound a little bit flat to me. How you pick a good watermelon if you're just checking them is you want to tap them, and they should sound like this. So I think I'm gonna pick this one up today. Now, you know, this is the end of the season here. You know, they have had a frost already, so they've basically harvested everything, taken them in from the outside. And they have some things for sale like the watermelon that I'm definitely going to get. And also on this side they got some honeydew melons here. Definitely really cool. So what we're going to do next is actually go inside, and actually they got a nice greenhouse with lots of greenery. So we're going to see if they got any edibles back there that I can show you guys. Alright, so here inside it looks like they got a standard, you know, gardening shop. They got all kinds of things to, you know, soil amendments for your garden and natural pest controls. And they even got a little farm market in here. They got peppers that they grew. Here's some of the tomatoes that they're selling, you know, and they basically, what they had to do is harvest all their crops because they did have a freeze, and they basically brought them in, so they're looking a little bit rough. You could still, you know, salvage some of these tomatoes. But what we're going to do next is actually walk through the greenhouse where they have a lot of things growing, but we're going to show you the fields in the back where things actually just aren't growing anymore. Now we're walking through on our way out to the fields in the back. Actually, you can see here's a lot more of the peppers that they grew, and here's actually some Italian sweet peppers right here. And once again, you know, if you do have a frost or in threat of frost, harvest everything, bring them in. You know, things like peppers will definitely ripen more off the plant. I've done it many times myself, and you can see they just got boxes and boxes of all kinds of peppers here. In the back here is actually where they grow some of the produce that they sell. It's a bit cooler back here in Michigan, and I feel sorry for you guys, you know, living out in Michigan, especially MI Gardener. You just can't grow the long season like I can. And you know, this is the fields. You can see over here is you know, they're basically growing and trellising up their tomatoes in a long field. They have about 1 acre here where they're just growing all kinds of stuff. You can see peppers and tomatoes, and let me show you some of this actually frost damage. So whatever they're doing, they're definitely doing it well here, because check it out. These are all the tomato vines that have just frosted. The plants didn't make it, and when that happens, these tomatoes literally just rot, and they're no good anymore. So before this happens to you, you guys want to just come out, and actually you could pluck up whole plants and take them in to, you know, a garage, hang them upside down, and let your, you know, tomatoes still ripen up. I think it's really sad. I mean, look here on the ground. I mean, this is how productive this space was. They have so much more food and tomatoes than they could totally ever harvest and eat. So man, don't let this happen to you. Bring in your tomatoes before they frost, because in some areas of the country it may be happening really soon, because if it frosts and you don't bring them in, then basically once the tomato basically is frozen, the best thing to do is actually put it back, take them out of the frost and put them in your freezer to preserve them. But otherwise, if they thaw out, it's just not gonna be the same. Now the bell pepper is a little bit more tolerant. But, you know, use your tomatoes before you lose them. Eat them fresh, dry them, even can them up to, you know, preserve your harvest. One of the questions that I've gotten so much is, hey, John, what do you do when your tomatoes rot and they freeze on the plant? I mean, what can you do with them? Well, the number one thing you should do with these guys is compost them and put them back and feed them to your worms and feed them to your compost pile to put nutrients back in for next year's growing season. Or the other thing you can do is just take a whole bunch and have a tomato fight. You guys just saw how the tomatoes didn't do so well. They didn't manage the freeze so well, but you know, I want to show you guys what will do well. So even if you live in Michigan here and it's about 40 degrees today and you can see my breath here, they still got cabbage, and the cabbage is really loving the weather. You know, when brassicas and whatnot, they get a little bit cold, the flavor really comes out and they taste a lot better. So these cabbages are doing really well, and in addition, it hasn't gotten that cold yet. And the lettuce is still doing amazing. They got some amazing heads of lettuce over on this side. And these are the crops that you want to grow in the winter, especially if you have mild winters, or if you put a hoop house over it. You know, it'll stay alive during the winter time. Now, I would definitely tend to favor more of the cabbages and brassica plants over the lettuces. You know, those guys have some built-in antifreeze type stuff, you know, that are naturally occurring. Whereas the lettuces, you know, I've had lettuce freeze in my yard. You know, I'll go out at night at midnight, it'll be frozen. I'll come out the next day and some of the outer leaves will be jacked up, but then, you know, the middle growth is still happening. But that's never happened to me on my cabbages and kales and cauliflowers. Over in this part of the acre here, they're growing leeks, and even though you know, you saw the tomatoes frosted, the leeks are fine. And besides the leeks here, he has some pepper plants growing, and these are some cool peppers. Check this out. These look like little UFO things. They have a really cool shape to them. Just like that, I grew these out one year, and they're pretty cool. When they get ripe, they get kind of more dark, just like this here. And these are actually pretty good peppers. So he's growing a lot of varieties of peppers here. Inside he's growing some hot ones. So actually let's next talk more about peppers over where he's trellising them up over near the tomatoes. The last thing we're going to show you guys actually outside are just some of the peppers. You know, while the tomatoes are totally devastated by the frost, you know, and the plants are devastated, at least the fruits are a little bit more resistant, you know, to the cold. That being said, you still want to harvest your whole pepper plants, and basically I chop them down at the base here and hang them upside down in like a dry place where it's not going to get frozen, and they'll still be all right. They'll ripen up. I mean, even some of the ones out here are still definitely good for eating, for sure. But you know, you can see how the cold damaged these peppers. What we're going to do next is actually go inside the greenhouse where he has been growing peppers all this time, and they're still looking amazing, and even still putting on flowers and more fruits. Now we're inside the nice, warm greenhouse compared to the outside where you saw everything just got frosted and it's just not happening. But check it out, even in a greenhouse, just in the back here, we got all these beautiful pepper plants still growing. I mean, these guys are literally just in 1 gallon containers. I mean, this should be a testament what you can grow in your patio, or if you have a nice sunny spot, sunroom, or even just put up a greenhouse, you can still keep your peppers alive. And these guys are definitely putting on a lot of fruit, even in the 1 gallons. What we're going to do next is actually show you guys just some of the different varieties that he's growing here. There's 10 different varieties in these different pots, and he's growing these specifically for the seeds. And another thing that's really cool here is that some of these peppers are some pretty rare peppers. Actually, you just can't find these at your local grocery store. You can't even find these seeds pretty much anywhere. Some of these peppers are some of the hottest peppers in the world. The scorpions, the Trinidad's, ghost peppers. And he has multiple varieties of several different kinds. So we're going to go over all the different pepper varieties that he's growing here and share some interesting tips with you along the way. So one of the cool things is he's growing 10 different varieties of peppers, and a lot of them are pretty rare varieties. Like, you know, this plant right here, just in a 1 gallon, is actually called a Tasmanian habanero plant. So there's many different types of habaneros. Actually, even I think I'm growing this year like a habanero that actually doesn't have any heat, and actually that's pretty cool. Generally, I like to actually grow the smaller type peppers because they produce a lot per bush. I mean, you grow a standard California Wonder Bell, you might get, you know, half dozen fruits on one plant, but this guy right here, there's literally 50 fruits, 50 peppers on this one plant here. It's just loaded with peppers, and once again, this is just grown in a 1 gallon pot. And the interesting thing about this is, I'll show you guys, is if we go to pick a pepper here, and he's specifically growing these for the seeds. You know, habaneros are known as a fairly hot pepper, but if you just eat the bottom part or just the tip, and just a little bit, you don't want to get too much off, it's actually quite sweet. Yeah, I taste a little bit of heat there, but I could eat tips all day. But what you do is, if you just bite into this more, you're going to start feeling that heat. And here's one that we got cut in half here. You could see, you know, so the bottom half, or the part that I ate, is like the part that's actually not too hot, so it's actually quite enjoyable. But once you start getting into the seeds and actually some of the flesh on the inside, then actually that's where it starts to get real hot for you. So if you want to be like the cool guy, you could pick peppers off your plant, just eat off the tip and show your friends, look, it's not hot, and then hand them one. They won't be aware that you just ate off the tip, and they'll bite a big piece of it, and they'll be in some pain. Next, I want to talk about this guy right here. Actually, this is called the Trinidad scorpion pepper, and this is one of the hottest peppers in the world again. And you can see here, these have a nice, cool shape on them. They look quite unique, and they're in different stages of ripeness. You know, obviously, the redder the pepper, the more ripe it is on these guys. And you know, he's gonna wait until full maturity to harvest these peppers when the seeds are at the prime to basically be ready to be harvested so that it can reproduce. If you start harvesting your peppers when they're green, the seeds aren't fully mature and they're probably not going to germinate into a new plant for you. One of the things that's happening here is that, you know, because he's doing a good fertilizer, natural fertilizer plan and putting microbes in the soil and building his soil up just even in a 1 gallon, this plant is still continuing to put on flowers and fruit. You can see here, you know, some little, small fruits starting to form. But another challenge he's having is because, you know, it's getting close to fall and winter time here now. The amount of sun during the day is getting shorter and shorter, and the pepper plants, they're from the tropics and they like a lot of sun, much like me. So when the days get shorter, you know, it gets a lot more challenging for the peppers to continue to produce. If you have good fertile soil and you're feeding your plants well, then it'll, you know, be more apt to produce. But at some point, the days are just going to get too short and you're going to stop your production unless you start using something like artificial lighting. This pepper right here we're looking at is called the ghost pepper, or the Buhut jolokia. And these guys are, once again, one of the hottest peppers in the whole world. And you know, you definitely don't want to, even if it's your worst enemy, feed them one of these guys. I mean, look up on YouTube for people eating one of these whole peppers. They're like in pain for hours. Definitely not fun. But the way you can experience one of these peppers if you want to have a little bit of fun is you could take a ripe pepper, and even after handling these peppers, you must be very careful. Don't even think about touching near your eyes. Actually, in India, they actually use these to make a pepper spray using some alcohol. And these guys, or you could take some of these guys, blend it up in a blender and have a spray bottle. And actually, if you spray that at your cats, well, I actually don't recommend that. Or if you spray that, that'll be crazy hot. But if you do want to enjoy these guys just to feel the taste, all you need to do is take the pepper and just lick it. And don't even lick it that much, and you'll just feel, well, I'm starting to feel it. Your tongue will start to burn. It's like, oh, that's just so hot, just even licking it. And I'm not even cutting into it yet, so that's just completely crazy. So besides the giant ghost pepper, he's growing a couple other varieties, so let's take a look at those next. Besides all the different red peppers and the ghost peppers that are red, the giant one we just saw, he's growing these guys. These are actually called yellow ghost peppers, or yellow Buhut jolokias, and looks definitely really cool. And once again, these are the world's hottest peppers, and I'm not messing with them. What we're looking at now is this one right here, and this is the standard ghost pepper. And this is just the regular size, so they're definitely smaller than the large ones that we just saw, and different than the yellow ones. And I want to remind you guys that there are all different varieties of peppers, even in with the same kind of pepper. There's so many different varieties that you can grow, and one of the cool things he's doing here is he's growing a variety to, you know, see which one does better, but also to save the seeds to get those out to people. Another cool thing we'll talk about in a little bit is right below me here. He's actually grew 50 varieties of onions for trials, or for experiment instead of the word trials. And I always encourage you guys to experiment and grow different varieties. You know, you may find one variety grows better for you, yields better, or you even like the taste better, or it's better for storage than other varieties, but you're never gonna know unless you grow it to find out. Here's the next variety that I'm gonna share with you guys. Actually, this is called the 7-pot pepper, and they say this is 7-pot pepper because you can make 7 pots of chili with it. You take a, you take a pepper, put it in your chili, you cook it once, and then you take it out, you eat your chili. You can make 7 more pots of chili before the heat goes away, or so they say. I don't know about that, but I'll tell you one thing. This pepper looks like to be one of the most productive peppers that he's growing here. It's just totally abundant and has so many different fruits on it in different stages of ripeness. And now we're next to another hot pepper, or maybe even the world's hottest pepper. I know people all the time get into arguments, and they'll post a post or comment below my video, John, the ghost peppers aren't the hottest peppers, you know, this one is. And, you know, this may be one of them, and actually this one may be the real hottest pepper in the world. So please turn red if you are. Hey, look, it's red. So anyways, this is actually called the Bush Tea Trinidad Scorpion Pepper right here, right next to me. And this one may be the hottest pepper in the world. And, you know, I don't really know because I'm not going to try it. Why don't you guys try one of each and then let me know which one's the world's hottest pepper. Hope you guys enjoyed learning more about all those different pepper varieties. Now, if you want to grow one of those hot peppers, you know, make sure you buy your seeds from a reputable seed seller. You know, I was actually talking to the guy here, and he got some ghost pepper seeds from some sources before, and they weren't really ghost peppers. So you got to make sure you use a reputable seed seller that's going to say the seeds that actually of the real kind you want to grow, because you really never know when you're just ordering, you know, off the internet to some guy. But if you're ordering from a bona fide nursery or some other place, in general, they're gonna have higher quality, and hopefully they're gonna have that real seed so that you can grow the real plant the first time. What we're gonna look next at is some of these guys here. And you know, as I mentioned earlier, he grew 50 varieties of onions, basically for trials to see which one's gonna do really well. You know, a lot of the onion varieties he grew for storage, and you know, here's 10 pounds of onions right here. And you know, these are the varieties that actually aren't so sweet, but he also grew some varieties of sweet onions, and those are the ones that interest me more. They don't actually store as well, but they taste a lot sweeter because they have a higher sugar content, and actually that's one of the reasons why they don't store so well. So let's go over to the onion section. Now I'm standing over all these sweet onions, and he grew several varieties. Here's one called Cipollini, and here's one called Red Trope, and here's one called Red Marbles. And all these are sweet onions, and as you can see, I mean, basically he's storing these right now to see how long they're gonna last. And you know, a lot of them actually at this point are sprouting up. So yes, you could actually take these guys and plant them. And what's happening to a lot of these actually is they're rotting, but they're also sprouting. So at that point, actually I think this one's rotting, it's kind of soft. At that point, they're not really good for eating anymore. There's not too much good flesh on there, but they're good for growing out, you know, to plant a container, take them in your house and, you know, keep them growing through the winter time and then bring them back out in the spring. And yes, you can actually just grow these out in your kitchen and harvest some of the greens off them and eat them, and you know, tastes just like onions. What happens when the onions go bad? You can see there's a whole bunch of them here. You know, around the little center here, you want to press down gently, and you know, if it's kind of soft and spongy, that means it's starting to rot. And so, you know, it's not going to make it if you're trying to store it. So your sweet onions, you know, don't grow so many of them because they're not going to store like through the winter for you, but they're definitely good for eating out of hand. So here's one that's kind of getting a little bit soft in here. We can kind of press that down. It's kind of going bad, and we cut this open for you guys to see and check it out. It's already starting to sprout here, so you can just basically replant this, but around the edge here, it's just getting all funky and rotten. So you definitely don't want to eat the middle, but you could still eat around the edge here. I mean, the middle's rotten, probably like in the middle there. It looks still pretty fresh and good to eat. And I probably wouldn't eat the edges either. I like to peel a couple layers back. But if we peel a couple layers back, I could go ahead and take a bite. Wow, that's actually sweet. Now the sweet onions, those make the best onion rings because they're already naturally sweet. The next crop that was grown here is actually these guys right here. They're just lying out. They're just literally singular leaves. And I think countries have gone to war for these leaves right here. You guys know what they are? Tobacco. Yes, I think there's probably some wars caused by tobacco here. But man, this stuff smells pretty good. Now he's experimenting and drying them in two different ways. He's taking out singular leaves and just setting them on the grid here in the greenhouse here to just let them slowly dry. He's also taking the full plants and he just harvested cut down the whole stalk and hung these upside down to dry. Now one of the cool things is he's growing naturally here. So what does that mean? He's not using any sprays and whatnot, and you know that, you know, tobacco actually attracts a lot of insects. For example, you know, some people will actually just grow some tobacco as a trap plant because the insects will go to the tobacco, say instead of your tomatoes. But the thing that he learned is that when he planted these guys out, yes, a lot of bugs want the tobacco, but guess what? When there's bad bugs, good bugs will follow if you're not spraying. So besides the bad bugs, the ladybugs also started colonizing and laying eggs on the tobacco because the ladybugs are there to eat one of their favorite foods, things like aphids, which is probably attacking the tobacco. So, you know, in nature, there's always hopefully a balance if there's not any sprays and chemicals going on that's actually upsetting and disturbing the balance of nature. So I always encourage you guys to actually embrace the balance of nature instead of trying to upset it, because you don't want to piss off Mother Nature. Besides growing the peppers for the seed that he's going to start and turn into baby plants next year, because they have a whole selection of basically plant starts you can purchase here if you're in the area every year in the springtime, obviously. They're also offering many different other crops you can grow year-round at your place. You know, for example, these guys right here are rhubarb. Rhubarb is a perennial vegetable, basically, that you just plant once and it continues to grow and grow and grow and come back. So besides the rhubarb, he has some other berry plants that we're going to go ahead and go over right quick for you to remind you guys that, you want to focus on growing things that are like a perennial type plant, asparagus, rhubarb, that you plant once, they keep coming back because those are literally a maintenance-free food garden. And then you could also have an area where you're growing the annual crops, the crops you're going to have to plant every season, and then when it frosts, you got to dig them up and start all over again. I like to have a balance of each kind of crop in my garden because it just makes life a lot easier. Things like berries are perfect perennial crops. You can plant them once, and provided you take care of them, they're going to come back year after year. Some of the berries we're going to go over right quick are these guys right here, the blueberries. Still looking pretty good. Next, we're going to take a look at a few other berry plants he has grown on. In this area, he has some boysenberry plants, and berry plants, are actually very vigorous. Usually at the end of the season, you'll cut them back, and the springtime, they'll start shooting out new canes and actually start to produce some fruit for you. So if you are going to plant some berries, I'd highly encourage you guys to have a dedicated section of your garden to grow berries. And, they can actually spread out and take over. So if you don't want them to, you might want to maybe, for example, grow them in a wine barrel. Strawberries are another great perennial crop you can plant literally once, and they'll come back year after year. I personally like growing alpine strawberries. They seem to be a little bit more resistant, and also produces little small tiny berries that are just packed full of flavor. Now they're not too sweet and they're not too big, but they taste amazing. Here we have June bearing strawberries, and they look actually quite healthy. And in the past I have grown strawberries, and I don't have a lot of space to dedicate in my garden to grow strawberries. If I had acreage, I'd definitely have a whole patch of strawberries. But I found that for me personally, growing strawberries was just not a productive use of the space. I'd rather grow something like kale or collard greens that to me are much more valuable, and I'll just buy some organic strawberries from a local farmer instead. Another berry that I'm growing that they have available here is the standard raspberries. They have red raspberries here, and it looks like they're doing pretty good. And raspberries and other berries, they're excellent crops, and I encourage everybody to have some berry plants. Berries are actually high in antioxidants, which are actually really healthy things for us to eat. And if you pick your berries at the peak of the ripeness, they even have higher antioxidant levels than, say, ones you'd buy at the store that are having to be picked too early so that they can survive the transport. That's just yet another reason to grow your own food at home. Another very cool crop that you can grow inside during the winter, especially if you freeze outside like they do here in Michigan, is the aloe vera. I love growing aloe vera. Aloe vera, you might think of, I got sunburn, I need to put aloe vera on it. Yes, you could definitely put on your sunburns, and people say that it helps with that. But I actually like to eat the aloe vera. Basically, I'd take the aloe vera and just basically fillet it and take off all the green part and eat the middle gooey clear part. There's not much flavor to it, but aloe vera juice is sold in health food stores for a lot of money. But I think it's far better to eat things fresh whenever possible. And aloe vera is actually, they say it's very healing for your intestines and for digestive disorders. So I definitely have lots of aloe growing in my greenhouse, unheated greenhouse, but in most parts of the country, it's probably far better to grow it inside under some light. And aloe vera, it's a succulent plant, so it doesn't like to get that much water. So be sure not to overwater your aloe vera. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode, learning more about the different varieties of peppers they're growing here and some of the things they have happening, like drying the tobacco really cool, and all the different varieties of onions. I have had a really fun time here at Showcase Gardens and Farm Market here in Coldwater, Michigan. If you're anywhere in the area, even driving through like I am, you definitely want to stop. They're doing a lot of good things here, much like every, independent, locally owned nursery in the United States. We need to support these guys because these are the guys that are actually growing a lot of different varieties. I mean, for example, he grew nearly 100 varieties of heirloom and standard tomatoes this year, and a lot of different varieties of peppers, and he makes these plant starts available to people like you who can grow them. And if you go to the big box stores, they don't offer the varieties, they don't offer the flexibility, but more importantly, they don't offer their expert information because small business owners literally, are ingrained in doing what they love, which, if you own a garden center, you probably love gardening, and it's definitely apparent by talking to the owner here. He loves gardening. He does all kinds of cool trials and trying new things, and you could really gain and learn from his experience, and you become a better gardener by shopping at a local nursery instead of supporting the big box stores where, people might not have as much information as somebody that's been doing it for, dozens and dozens and dozens of years. So it's really important to eat local, shop local, and grow your own stuff in your backyard. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode like I did. Once again, my name is John Kohler with growingyourgreens.com. We'll see you next time, and remember, keep on growing.